Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 8, Episode 55 of our weekly Q&A videos. If you're on YouTube, links in the description to watch us on all the major podcasting platforms. If you're on the podcast for BDCKR Gaming on YouTube. Getting straight into the first question. This one comes from Samuel Martin, and they say, how exactly do you look for new glitches?
So, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, especially because there haven't really been new glitches that we've found in a long time.
But I can tell you a sort of general approach, because I don't know that there's necessarily one way that you can find them. A big part of it is sort of ear to the ground. People tell us about stuff that's happening or that they've seen or that they've been able to do.
Yeah.
And we try to reproduce it. And if we can reproduce it, then we actually do it enough. So to me, there's certain elements of it, right? Because I think way back when there were not only more players but more glitches, there was like a flood of glitch videos anytime there's something that was possible.
Yeah.
And what do you think? What did you feel like was sort of the major shortcoming of those kind of glitch videos?
Well, so a lot of cases what happens is there's a sort of series of steps where the first step is the hardest, right? In terms of looking for new glitches, the short answer is you can't unless you know the game really well. There's sort of two ways to get to it, where one way is you play the game a lot and something happens to you that's weird, and then you try to do it again.
So that sounds like knowing that it exists. Like once you are aware that something is possible.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other way is knowing enough about how the game works that you can sort of make a prediction. Well, if I do X, then the game will probably respond in Y way, and then testing that out.
Y way.
And yeah.
That's like a joke. Sorry, that's a Huawei joke.
Yeah. And neither of those methods let you skip that point where you just spend a lot of time with the game or get sort of lucky with it. And then the next step after that is something weird happens. You try to do it again. And then once you are able to do it consistently, you've figured out sort of your building blocks. You figured out the tools that you're going to be working with. And then the next step, which I feel like a lot of people didn't do, was to sort of start to narrow it down and tinker and look at that bigger set of steps. So, I did exactly this, and this, and I could copy it every time. Or you could try to figure out, well, if I take this part out, does it still work? If I take this part out, does it still work? If I do this, right? Is there any way of sort of figuring out what's the core of it and what's other stuff that you just happen to be doing at the same time?
And I think probably the best thing that we added, and probably why we got good at it, was that tinkering level step wasn't just to figure out what was necessary, but sometimes it would be a way of figuring out what would go wrong.
Yeah.
Because the inevitable thing would be somebody would do a step wrong. They would follow it wrong. And something would happen that they didn't expect or didn't want.
Yeah.
And if we'd done the glitch enough, then we could troubleshoot that. Like we'd have an idea of what was happening. And the reason why I think a lot of people didn't do it is because once they figured out the glitch, they just want to post it as soon as possible. And that hurt us a little bit sometimes because we wouldn't necessarily be the first out of the gate.
Yeah.
And you can't understate how important it is to be
early.
Right. When you're the first person there, like the algorithms on YouTube totally favor the first arrival.
Yeah.
And I guess the problem now is that there's lots of potential glitches, but let me give you a good example. Is that with trying to re-roll using the airplane mode / refund glitch for Phantom Zone on the last crystal.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had reports from a lot of users saying, oh yeah, we can change it by disconnecting at this point and then resetting it if we don't like what we get.
Yeah.
And we've tried it a bunch of times. We can't get it. Now, we think we know. Part of the reason sometimes why people might even think that even if it's not happening is because it looks like we can actually get it to look like it's re-rolling, but if you save reconnect to the server, and then you look at what you actually got, if you look at your collection, you didn't swap from the first roll that you didn't like.
Yeah. So that's sort of the long and the short of it, is that's the step, and the first step is to just play a lot, and think about it, right? Mm. And it's hard because the whole point about, you know, a new glitch is that it's going to be coming from somewhere that we're not looking at right now. Mm. So you either need to have a unique experience that nobody else has either had, or nobody who's had it has done anything with that information.
Right.
Or you need to have thought about something in a way that other people haven't, and also probably that the developers haven't, right? To sort of run into a situation where you go, well, I could do this, right? And so the easiest way to find a new glitch is to start off of the basic framework of an old glitch. And that's how several new glitches were found back in the day.
So I can give another example of that. Like, this is an interesting sort of oral history of everything. There was one time there was a multiple pack glitch where you could spend the price of... Okay, actually, there's been a bunch of them. It was the one where you had almost no credits.
Yeah.
And you would spend by hitting the buy for a pack.
Yeah.
Before it had actually registered the buy, before it had taken money from you.
Yeah, and if you had enough money for it, you would spend all of your money. But if you didn't have enough money for it, it would not give you negative money. It would just let you buy however many packs you could tap fast enough.
Right. And that was sort of the first thing that was discovered. And we didn't really have a big part in that. However, at one point, when we realized the kind of lag that there was, so that sometimes when you touch the spot, the screen wouldn't change while it was still registering the touches.
Yeah.
And that was where we did the flipping, where we could flip the device to reorient.
Yeah.
And during that time where the game was reorienting, it would buy you a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you remembered where you needed to hit and where the button would end up, you could also exploit it that way.
A little more efficiently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of different things. And the problem right now is I don't know that there's any sort of strange behavior, aside from the glitches that still work, any sort of strange behavior that's reproducible enough that we could start experimenting with it to sort of flesh out the parameters.
Yeah. And not to say that there isn't, it's just that, you know, we wouldn't know where to look for it.
Yeah.
And so there's no point in really going looking. In a lot of ways, the glitches will find you if they find you. Or if you're looking for something, you have to start at sort of the basis that we're already on. But we've been sitting with these and stewing with them for a while, so it's hard. It's not like spend 10 hours, find a new glitch type of process.
Right. And what was also interesting at the beginning too was once you know how something is done, and once you know that a certain glitch kind of exists, it makes it easier to figure out what was happening, like, to understand the behavior of what you're seeing in your opponents. Because I remember there was a point in time before the multiple pack glitch became widespread that you would see these, that what would look like hack teams, where there would be multiple copies of the same character, like far in excess of what you'd expect based on either people buying packs or like it was say like you look at you'd see maybe a video of somebody's team, and on the team they'd have like 20 copies of something.
Yeah.
And it was in retrospect that we realized that when we were playing around with the multi-pack glitch, that was very likely what they were doing, that they were using their hard-earned money to buy multiple packs, and that that whole, you have enough for just one pack, but because you're smacking so often, it didn't
deduct a million.
It didn't deduct. I think our best was maybe like almost 50 packs off the price of one pack, but it required that you spend down until, so you wouldn't be actually spending your real money, because it would deduct it if you had it, but if you didn't have it, it would just deduct it once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was also one sort of a half step away from an infinite credits glitch, because then you just go in and you sell all your other characters.
Right.
And you get not quite infinite, but functionally as many credits as you could ever want and more.
Yeah. So that was a way to bank them.
Yeah.
Like to save credits as characters, as stuff, even though it was an inefficient way because it was only worth 30% of what it actually cost.
Yeah, but 30% of what it was supposed to cost, as opposed to the amount that you paid for it, which was the fraction of the cost of a single pack, was a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, then it became a case of figuring out what the best way to exploit it was, right? So it used to be that you could buy the most wanted pack, you have 600,000 credits, and then you just tap it really fast and get 50 copies. And then it became, with the flip, spending the equivalent of a bronze pack, which is 8,000. You only needed 8,000.
Yeah.
And you could flip it to buying 50 most wanted packs instead, whatever was on the same screen.
Yeah, which was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And also easier to build up the credits for. You could sell back like one character from your 50 pack spree and then have enough for that again.
And when you look at the kind of the glitches that people are trying to exploit now, like the one where you have the 200th metal pack.
Yeah.
And they spend it and then reset it until they get a metal character, and then if they've already got a copy of that metal character, they can sell it back. So then instead of 200 nth metal, now they have 240.
Yeah.
So it's each time is worth 40 credits. It's tedious. Yeah, it's pretty tedious. And it's a lot of work, and we're clearly out of the golden days of
glitches for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we're always happy to hear about things, and we're eager to test them out, but you know, it's been a while since there's been anything that's actually panned out. Mm-hmm. Panned out is from gold prospecting.
That makes sense. That checks out.
Where you swish the water around until the gold settles at the bottom, you get rid of all the other lighter sediment. Mm-hmm. So panning it. So I've heard people use panned as sort of a negative thing, but as an expression, I think the positive sentiment is from gold.
Yeah. So there we go. So yeah, that's how you look for new glitches. Unfortunately, that answer basically boils down to you don't. Sorry. The next question comes from Apocalypse, or I guess this is more of a comment. But they say, the main problem I have with the COVID vaccines is that it has become so overly politicized here in the US. Democrats are getting vaccinated for publicity to boost their following and hopefully remain in office, and Republicans are refusing to get vaccinated mainly because Democrats are demanding everyone to be. It's no longer about doing what's best for you or your family, it's about doing what your political party is. Then there are mobs on social networks like Twitter attacking people just for asking questions about the vaccines. Nicki Minaj tweeted about a friend of her cousin getting vaccinated and said his family jewels became swollen. I don't know if you've seen this tweet.
I've
probably
seen that tweet,
yeah. Not a day later.
Because the vaccine had sex with them.
The family jewels is, I think, a nice, tasteful way of saying it.
Yeah.
Not a day later, multiple news articles are published labeling her as anti-vaccine and claim she was spreading misinformation. It was one tweet saying why her cousin was refusing to get vaccinated, and on top of that, she said to be comfortable with your decision, not bullied. On the same day before the news article, she put up a poll asking which vaccine she should get. So... there's some stuff in this.
So let's maybe try to unpack it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You want to go first?
I do, broadly speaking, agree that the vaccine has become very politicized, where it shouldn't have been. It shouldn't be a political issue. There's a lot of stuff that shouldn't be political issues.
Okay, but who's making a political issue? Like, I mean, when you try to both sides this kind of thing, I mean... I feel like there is a real culprit.
Yeah.
Like there is actually one group that's trying to demonize vaccinations.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, and maybe I just haven't seen it, is I'm not aware of any Democrats who are just getting vaccinated because it's party line. Yeah. You know, there might be some people who are like maybe neutral on it, but I don't know if there's anybody who's getting vaccinated who really strongly believes that it's, you know, terrible for them. Or anything else like that. I think anybody who's getting vaccinated is weighing sort of the pros and the cons in their personal life. And I think to some extent there is, I think, social stigma around getting vaccinated, and that is a force that's leading to some people getting vaccinated. But I would argue that, you know, that's people who are getting pushed by the people around them to do what's best for public health. Yeah. And that sort of feeds into the right reasons. I saw a video of a girl saying that she said that she'd go out with a guy if he got vaccinated, and then went on 2 dates and then dumped him afterwards and stuff like that. And, you know, I think if there are people who are willing to get vaccinated for relatively minor reasons.
Minor concessions. Their principles weren't that strong to begin with.
When it's not based off of like... Yeah, because I don't think you can 180 on somebody who thinks it's going to kill them or that it's, you know, awful for them. So I think when you have people willing to get it in those cases, unless there's people, you know, getting at a gunpoint or going, if you don't get this vaccine, your career is over, right? I don't think that there's a huge amount of sort of meaningful external pressure that's going to make somebody compromise on their values. Because I think that the other thing is that you can just not talk about it for the most case. And I know it's a little bit different for politicians, but the reason I think why a lot of people are having people sort of jump down their throats, it's not the people who are quiet and thinking about it. The argument seems to be largely between people who are really public and vocal about not getting a vaccine.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I agree with a lot of what you said, but I think I actually maybe take it a little bit more extremely. I think there probably is, I think people have an obligation to their community and the people around them more so, and that they really should have a darn good reason more than just unfounded fear. So, all right, so here's the thing. I think that mainstream media in general, and people with a prominent platform, so famous people, they have a bigger obligation to be aware of what they're saying, of the implications of what they're saying, and sort of speak with the understanding that certain things, there's a high potential for being misinterpreted or being misread.
Yeah.
So, and to me, the really big one, the obvious one, is that the common mistake that people make between causation and relation, where stuff that happens together, they mistake it for a causal relationship instead of just like a temporal relationship. Mm-hmm. And so, just to give you some context, because I think this is going to be helpful, that the study of, let's see, there's a pediatric study of the vaccine, and I'm just going to read a small quote from it, right? So, 2,268 trial participants, including 1,518 vaccine recipients, followed for at least 2 months past the second dose. There were 5 severe adverse events. None were linked to the vaccine. So these adverse effects included ingestion of a penny. That was one person in the vaccine group. So this kid swallowed a penny. Mm-hmm. Fractures. There were 2 in the vaccine group and 1 in the placebo group. And infective arthritis, 1 person in the vaccine group.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's a combination of these events clearly are very uncommon. When you've got 2 fractures versus 1, that sort of randomness of 1, even if you could connect to the vaccine somehow. But if you want to blame the vaccine for a kid swallowing a penny, I think we're getting into sort of the ridiculous stuff. And they have to keep track of this.
There was another testing thing where there was somebody who got hit by lightning, I think, in one of the controls that was in the adverse events. And you talked a little bit about the famous people needing to use their platform more responsibly. Let's actually read Nicki Minaj's tweet.
All right.
So that we can talk about it. My cousin in Trinidad won't get the vaccine because his friend got it and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now the girl called off the wedding. So just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision, not bullied. So, her tweet, if you really want to give her sort of the most generous reading possible, she technically doesn't say that because of the vaccine is why this person's testicles became swollen. But she really heavily implies it.
Right.
There's this sort of understanding of this happened because of this. And she's saying, my cousin's friend lost his marriage, right? Had his wedding called off because he got the vaccine. Which is just, it's not a responsible thing to say on your platform. It's not reasonable to come out and say that.
There's the really dumb argument where, I didn't actually say that. I mean, you don't have to say the words. I think if you've got more than, say, a grade 2 or grade 3 understanding of communication and English, that you understand that certain things are strongly implied, even if they're not explicitly stated. And that kind of evasive, I didn't say those words, is kind of lame.
So, is she anti-vaccine? From this statement, you can't say definitively whether or not she is or is not anti-vaccine. And from, if she did, post on her story about which one she should get or whatever, we can say that she's maybe vaccine skeptical.
But she's contributing to the dialogue in a way that's actually, that does land on one side. Even if she's not anti-vaccine, this is an anti-vaccine contribution.
Yeah, exactly. And so she's spreading information that makes it easier for people to just have this vague, uneasy feeling about the vaccine that's not based off of anything at all. And so I think it was fair to be critical of her. And I think part of the problem is that, you know, I'm not saying people should be harassed or, you know, piled on, right? Just because they're big and they say something. You can say something wrong, you can make a mistake. It's important to note is that the tweet is still up. Right? Okay. I didn't find that from like an archive. I didn't find a screenshot of it. I was reading it from Nicki Minaj's status. So she's kept it up and had more than enough people giving her an opportunity to sort of learn about it. And yeah, it was a damaging thing that she said. And overall, her going, which vaccine should I get? And then tweeting this, does more harm than good, right? It's not information it's not really real information at all, right? It's a loose sort of correlation. It's about the same quality as all those people who did something wrong, when trying to use our glitches and then came and commented and said it's not working anymore. It's been fixed. Right? And
or even that our steps are wrong when they watch somebody else's video.
Yeah. And so it's not real. Right. And so it does suck. And, you know, she shouldn't be using her platform to spread ideas like this.
I mean,
so some people maybe slightly mischaracterized how she felt about things. But
it has nothing to do with how she felt. Like, because I'll tell you something. I have no idea how she feels inside her own head. Yeah. That's her head.
Yeah.
But I can tell you how harmful what she said was.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly, so people made attributions. People tried to tell you what she felt in her head. And if she said that other stuff, maybe they were wrong, right? Yeah. But that's sort of almost separate to the question. And I think the fact that maybe other people misspoke or weren't careful with their words, they're also still being a lot more careful with their words than she was with hers. Right. So I think if you're coming after the people for criticizing her like that, I think there's a big argument to say that you should be coming down against what she said at least as hard.
Right.
So yeah, it does suck. It is really unfortunate that it's a political thing. It shouldn't be a political thing. And I think but the reason why I think it shouldn't be a political thing is just because people should be getting educated and then, you know, getting vaccinated unless they are so afraid of the vaccine that they really also should be not going out, not doing anything.
But it can be managed too. I mean, Canada, or at least a working group in Canada that was, I believe, based out of the University of Waterloo, did a really good paper to summarize how to deal with different supposed reasons for not getting the vaccine.
Yeah.
And what were the workarounds. And I think that makes so much more sense. I mean, here's the other thing related to vaccines and whether you get to be reluctant or hesitant or skeptical about them. Yeah. I think it's a totally legitimate position to take. But I also think that there are certain groups of people that if you want to stay in those groups of people, you should not be allowed to remain unvaccinated.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with if there are others in society that rely on you, and that have no choice of interacting with you, or that they're particularly vulnerable and they have no choice of interacting with you, you have to get a vaccine or you are out. That, to me, that applies to healthcare workers.
Yeah.
That applies to public transit workers. That applies to police officers. Mm-hmm. Like, when do you get a choice to say, well, you know what? I don't want to have an interaction with you, officer, because you haven't been vaccinated.
Yeah.
I just
Other
think
people have to be able to opt out.
Right. You have to have the chance of opting out of any interaction with you. And that's why I think it makes sense. You know, government workers, if they're, you know, licensing officers or something, right?
Yeah.
I think all those groups, really, it does make sense that they should and must be vaccinated, decrease. And we addressed this last time, right? Vaccines don't eliminate the risk, but they decrease it.
Yeah. It's an extra couple of levels of safety when you combine with everything else. Yeah, and we've said it a million times, so we're not going to harp on it. We're not interested in forcing anybody to get vaccinated. We just want...
I am.
You're... Okay, well, I'm not.
Yeah, well, I mean, not everybody, but those groups, I think, for sure.
Oh, those groups. but I'm not interested in forcing any individual to get vaccinated, right? If that person is still not comfortable with it and they either figure out how to work from home or they, have to quit their job or, go on leave until stuff is safe enough that it's okay for them, right?
Or people can choose not to buy from them if if it's a business, if it's whatever.
I am not interested in forcing any individual to have the needle stuck in their arm, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that saying that this person needs to have a vaccine to continue doing this job is a question of public safety. And I think that, even past everything else, I'm not saying that any one individual person who absolutely refuses to should be held down against their will and vaccinated or anything like that. Right? If I could snap my fingers and make everybody vaccinated tomorrow, I would absolutely do it.
Oh, did you hear that funny story? Did I tell you this one already? About there were people in Greece?
You did, yeah. And I heard it separately too, where they were bribing doctors to give them vaccination, like passports or like vaccination documentation.
By giving them the vaccine?
Fake vaccines, and the doctors were just giving them real
taking the money too, but they're taking the money too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's another one of those apocryphal stories that I think, it's almost too good to be true, but it's still kind of funny.
See, the bribery part I absolutely believe, because I know that that's how a lot of things work in Greece, is that they have a very bribery-centric culture where it's just one of the ways that you do things, and it's sort of a loop of it, where there's anybody who's like an official or a relative authority in a certain thing, so you bribe doctors all the time,
Really?
police officers and everything. It's apparently a thing in Greece, and the weird thing to me is that it seems like another one of those. I guess it's not weird. It makes sense to me. But if you're in a lot of those roles, I guess if you're like a police officer, you're probably getting bribed a lot more than you're giving out bribes.
Yes.
But in some jobs, I imagine that the money you're getting from bribes in is also circulating in bribes out when you have to bribe various other people, right? Because if you have to bribe a lot of people in your interactions in your daily life, it's another one of those things where it feels like there's probably a bunch of groups that it doesn't help very much. Right. And then the money, once again, just accumulates in the hands of the relatively powerful.
Right.
At the expense of the people who aren't in sort of bribe positions, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a totally weird connection. It strikes me that it's very much like multiplayer rewards. The people that are getting more multiplayer rewards because they rank higher are the ones that actually have more stuff already.
Yeah. Weird.
Right?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I mean, I think it's sort of the nature of any kind of capitalism, right?
Yeah.
Like, once you get the ball rolling, it's almost like an exponential kind of growth, where it's definitely not linear, and that the work you put in increases the speed at which you accumulate resources.
Yeah. So there we go. But that's our vaccine talk again.
Yeah. But I tied it back into injustice. You like that?
We did tie it back into injustice a couple times. Yeah. So anyways, get vaccinated. Research it and then get vaccinated.
But okay, so hold on. Research though. I saw a meme that's been propagated a bit, and it's about, they say scientists doing research and it shows them in a lab.
Yeah.
And then anti-vaccination person doing research and they're sitting on a toilet looking on their phone.
Yeah.
Research isn't looking at the secondary sources. Research is always looking at the primary sources. So you look at the studies, you develop enough of a vocabulary so you understand what they're talking about when they say stuff.
Yeah.
And then that makes sense. You judge for yourself what's actually true. If you look at the primary sources, and if you can't, I mean, one of the easiest sort of ways to judge the balance of the information is that what percentage of scientists and doctors, like licensed doctors, not chiropractic doctors, but medical doctors, are getting vaccinated.
Yeah.
And I think the preponderance of the sentiment is to get vaccinated. Mm-hmm. But check the primary sources yourself. That's what real research is.
Yeah, so we're saying and we're not Democrats or Republicans. We're like
Canadians.
It's not a political lines thing. We just think it's safe, and that's because we've looked at stuff.
Yeah.
And you and I are both those kinds of nerds who do dig into stuff a little bit more, and look at stuff and balance stuff, and hopefully. From the way that we've been talking about it. I mean, obviously we have a very strong opinion on it, but that's just because the research leads us to a very strong opinion on it. Yeah. I don't almost none of the political leaders in any of the governments that are recommending a COVID vaccines are people that I would take their word at sort of anything past just people saying stuff, right? It's not that I think like Joe Biden's so great, or like any like mainstream Democrats are so great that when they say get vaccinated, I'm like, oh, of course, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
I think everybody in politics, and not to say everybody's the same, but to say that like the vast majority of people in mainstream politics right now aren't worth trusting past looking at stuff yourself. So yeah, it's not a political thing. It's just based off of all the information I've seen thing. Yeah. There we go. Our next question comes from Fufufu, and they say, I have been...
Fufufu or fa-fa-fa?
Fa-fa-fa. I don't know.
Fufufu.
Maybe, and we'll do this one and then we'll probably call
I think that's,
it here. I've been playing this game for a long time now, but a month ago I stopped playing it. I switched on Injustice 2 and enjoyed it. It may be hard for a free-to-play player at the beginning, but it's worth it. Lots of content to make an interesting character. Now I have a good roster to grind multiplayer, and I have a 3 to 4 stars of characters. Solo raid is awesome too, plus the rewards are good. I hope you switch to game 2 and create more content. Love this channel.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing what they've done, because it's not just, I mean, we haven't been playing Injustice 2 for a long time. If you want to dig around on our channel, you'll see that we did do some beginner videos. And I think, it was interesting content. The problem was that it became definitely too much of a time sink, and it favored the money spent way more strongly than the original Injustice did.
Yeah.
And they banned our account, suspended our account. There was really no recourse.
Yeah, we don't know why.
They didn't respond to support. Never responded. So that was another reason not to. But I mean, I know that I followed Injustice 2 a little bit to know that they've added other features since they started. The same way they did with Injustice 1, right? There hadn't been updates for a long time, and I'm not sure what the status is or updates for Injustice 2. But I know they added like a team component where you could work with other people online and have what do you call it? Like
clans?
Missions. Yeah, clans sort of, I guess.
Yeah.
The problem I think I had, the ideological problem I had with Injustice 2, the biggest one I had was how much it favored not playing. Yeah. And I think it's kind of cool because it adds another element of planning, right? When you're not going to be playing anyways. Yeah. But because the rewards are so good that you'd have to send characters away on missions, and while they're doing missions, you couldn't play them, and then after a certain time, you get a reward coming back. The more heavily it favored that you could send, a bunch of your best characters on missions, because if certain missions required, I think, a minimum level in your characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then it favored sending away better and better characters to get better and better rewards. How does that, I don't know, it felt like it was encouraging. It was encouraging less gameplay to make progress. The same way, to me, certain glitches encourage you not to play.
Yeah.
Like, my favorite glitch has always been the challenge reset, because it actually encourages you to play more.
Mm-hmm.
Getting free recharges, because that would mean you're getting to play more.
Mm-hmm.
The worst ones were the ones where you had to do something over and over again that had nothing to do with the game, that was really tedious, and was, like, boring.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt like, that big part where you sent your characters away on missions for Injustice 2, which to me was a really easy way for non-paying, free-to-play players could get stuff. But then what it's doing is it's forcing you, hey, don't play the game. You don't get to use this character that you really like that's really good. I think that just sucks.
Yeah, so we never got bit by the Injustice 2 bug, and we have spent enough time doing other stuff. It would be a big time sink. We've got, we love Injustice 1 for what it was, but
what it is too, I'll say.
And what it is. And yeah, but we weren't so interested in picking up a whole other, like mini part-time job worth of work get everything in that game. So yeah, probably not going to be jumping ship to Injustice 2, ever. Yeah, and unfortunately or fortunately, depending on who you are.
I think that is really difficult. And one thing that's not maybe so obvious in our videos, and I feel like I've said this so many times, so I apologize if you're one of the people who've been following us for a while, is that a big part of what goes into making these videos isn't just the time that we spend talking, and it's not just the gameplay that's playing in the background. It's the hours and days and weeks of playing where we've developed a certain expertise and a certain facility with gameplay and the players and the strategies and stuff that, you know, it's like, let me give you another analogy. It's like, I think this was attributed to Sergio Aragones, who was one of the cartoonists on Mad magazine.
Yeah. And
somebody paid him to do a sketch, and it took him like 10 minutes or something. And somebody said, oh, 10 minutes, had something to do with some comment about how it wasn't worth the money, that it wasn't...
Yeah, because it didn't take him very long.
Yeah. And he said, well, you're not paying for how long it took me to do a sketch. You're paying for all the years of practice and all these years of experience that meant that I could do the sketch that quickly, as good as it was.
Yeah. I've heard that attributed to a bunch of places. I think that's one of those like apocryphal stories that gets attributed to everybody and everything.
So it's the same idea, I think. I mean, I think I appreciate the sentiment where people think that we could just quickly switch to another game, but I think the time it would take to develop the expertise in another game isn't something that I'm ready to commit to now or spend.
And we don't got a lot of extra time for other games.
That's true. Yeah. So I've been really enjoying Beat Saber, though.
Yeah, Beat Saber is a lot of fun.
On Oculus
Quest 2. Now the Meta Quest 2. Yeah.
And I do want to point out to everybody who's in Canada that there's a big promotion. This is unsolicited, but this is a good time to pick it up if you're on the fence, because the Amazon Canada has a promotion where they give you a $70 gift certificate. I mean, it expires in a couple months, I think, but they give you a $70 gift certificate if you buy the Oculus Quest 2, and if you get the cheapest one, that's what, $400.
Yeah,
so that's probably a decent discount for something that typically doesn't go on sale.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think we'll call it there for this week. To finish up, we've got some people that we'd like to thank. I'm going to preface this one by saying that she wrote it. This is a quick shout out to Eliza Curly Girl Caton. She has gorgeous, naturally curly hair, and despite being God's favorite, she wants you to know that it's very hard to manage. And this shout out was brought to you by whatever you want it to be.
So the funny thing is, do you know, I feel like there's a lot of people I know who have straight hair who want to have it curly.
Yeah.
A lot of people who have curly hair who want to have it straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's that one of those things where it's not so much that one is necessarily good or bad, but people feel like a change, and when they've been used to something for so long, it feels like anything different is better.
Yeah, grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'd also like to give a huge thank you to all the lovely folks who support us on Patreon.
And that would be Victor Gomez, Consul Peasant and Edwoon at the top tier, Last Word, Sinemac and Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier, Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., Irvin Ruiz, and Eddydoo at the credited level, and Chris Wolf, Scarlett Danny, Awesome Gamer 2-for-1, Pavu RS, Gavin Malott, and Isfar E at the gratitude level. Look, no pauses.
There we go. Thanks so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda!